Hi, I'm a Possum and I find garbage. Today's garbage is Eragon, a remake of Star Wars but with a dragon. Now, Eragon is based on the first of a series of books written by some guy named Christopher Paolini, who wrote it when he was 15 years old back in 2003. Just 1 year later, 20th Century Fox purchased the movie rights for the price of a PlayStation 2 and some dirty movies. And then this movie was puked up in 2006. Just to be clear, I have never read the book, and I'm not about to read a 500-page novel for the sake of this video. And I don't think I need to because this is a review of the movie and not the book. But I have heard what other people who have read the book have said about it, and how it compares to this movie, so I'm aware of at least some of what was changed. Now, the thing about novels is that if something in one is written a certain way, you have to assume the author wrote it that way for a reason. So when you go adapting a novel into a movie, you inevitably have to change things for the sake of time, pacing, visuals, or whatever. So you have to really think about what you're doing so you don't end up compromising the coherency of the story. That ain't what they did with Eragon. Oh no, let's start the review. The movie starts with Jeremy Irons narrating about how the fantasy land of Allegasia was ruled by these magical dragon riders. Yeah, Jeremy Irons is in this movie, I guess because he spent all of his Dungeons and Dragons money.
To protect and serve was their mission, and for thousands of years the people prospered.
And if you need me to explain what a dragon rider is, then you shouldn't be here. But then this one dragon rider named Galbatorix, whose name sounds like a pill you take for indigestion, betrayed and killed all of them and made himself king, and now he's oppressing everyone. But then this rebel group called the Varden tried to fight back, but they were defeated and fled to the mountains where they spend all the time drinking moonshine and picking ticks off each other. Sometime later, some princess named Arya is riding through the woods with something she stole from Gal Gadot. So he summons the lead henchman, a wizard named Durza.
I suffer without my stone. Do not prolong my suffering.
What kind of name is Durza anyway? Sounds like the name of a female Decepticon that turns into a bulldozer. And not even a good bulldozer, but a shitty one, like a Dresser TD7. Piece of shit. Then we see our hero, a farm boy named Eragon, whose name is just Dragon with a D replaced with an E, because this was thought up by a 15-year-old. Putting his shoes on so he can go hunting in the woods in the middle of the night like a tree frog who's self-conscious about his lazy eye or something.
Miles away, a young boy ventures out hunting.
Yeah, thanks, I have eyes. Then we cut to Durza and his men ambushing Arya, but she gets away. So he summons a wall of fire to stop her, and she uses magic to teleport the blue thing to what I guess she thought was a random spot in the woods somewhere, but it happens to appear right in front of Eragon. Arya then mocks Durza because now Gallbladder is gonna be pissed. So Eragon just walks right up to the mysterious blue thing that just appeared in a flash right in front of him, and touches it with his bare hands even though it's still smoking, because that's what a smart person would do. Sometime later, we cut to some village where Gallstone's men are dragging boys off who just turned 18 to be conscripted into his army. But then Eragon is just trying to trade the blue thing to a butcher in exchange for some meat.
What is this? Some kind of stone?
Eragon explains he was hunting in some place called The Spine, and this makes the butcher realize it probably belongs to Gorgonzola, so he kicks him out. Eragon then sees Jeremy Irons being harassed by some soldiers who accuse him of poaching and steal his pheasants or whatever the those are. Eragon then returns to his farm where he's greeted by his cousin who makes fun of him for failing to kill anything. Then they play fight in the barn until Eragon's uncle comes in, and then we cut to Eragon looking at the blue thing. That's the sound effect they decided to go with? Sometime later, Eragon and his cousin are working in the field when his cousin tells him he's leaving because he just turned 18 and doesn't want to be castrated. I mean, conscripted. Sorry, I was thinking about my ex-wife. Later that night, Eragon's uncle tells him he's gonna have to leave soon too. Somehow, this conversation turns into Uncle Guy telling Eragon he doesn't know why his mother left. My mother left when I admitted to her that I was adopted. Then we cut to Cousin Guy leaving, and then we got a shot of Eragon looking at the sunset, because that's how you show a character is sad in movies, I guess. And then, after so many of these weirdly short scenes glossing over Eragon's home life, we see him just kind of sitting around in the barn, not doing anything. when the blue thing starts to shake.
Not a stone, an egg.
So you finally figured out that the smooth, egg-like object, which looks nothing like a stone, is, in fact, an egg and not a stone?
What is this? Some kind of stone?
And he's not the only one who thought it was a stone. So it's like Allegasia is just a land of idiots who think rocks look like eggs. Even Gazorpazorp Field called it a stone, even though he knew it was an egg.
I suffer without my stone.
Why would he call an egg a stone? Was it just for the sake of the audience? Did they think we would be too stupid to realize this egg-shaped object in a movie about dragons wouldn't turn out to be a dragon egg, and this would be some kind of clever reveal? Was this in the book?
What are you? Well, you're not a bird.
So instead of being freaked out by the monstrous, unidentified animal in front of him, Eragon decides to reach out and touch it. But this time, touching something strange and mysterious has consequences. So a light flashes, then Jeremy Irons, Gugu Gajub, and Arya all sense something and wake up. Then Durza comes in and asks Arya where the egg is, and then she tells him it hatched already. The next morning, Eragon wakes up looking like he burned his hands on an electric stove, and then he tries to milk his baby dragon. Feed milk to his baby dragon.
Go on. Drink while it's still warm.
Who the drinks their milk warm? The baby dragon spills the milk and then kills and eats a rat that just happened to be nearby at that particular moment, and Eragon just smiles with delight at the horrifying sight of this thing swallowing a rat whole like a snake. And I guess we're supposed to think it's cute. We cut to Durza telling Gonzo the egg hatched. I guess he read Arya's mind with magic or something because he knows Eragon has it. Either that or it's a plot hole. Garbage gets worried that the Varden will find out and will be encouraged to rise up against him again, so he tells Durza to find and kill Eragon. Back at the farm, Eragon looks at the big gross scar on his hand, which he got by touching the baby dragon, and then he touches the baby dragon again. We cut to Durza at his castle, or maybe he's outside, I don't know. But he summons these dudes called Razaks out of the ground and tells them to go kill Eragon. Back at the village, Eragon overhears some of the villagers complaining about the soldiers, and then Jeremy Irons, his character's name's Brom, by the way, starts rambling about dragons.
There was a time when our land flourished without cruelty and fear. A time of dragons and dragon riders.
Those days are long gone.
So are my hopes of ever being a daddy. The soldiers hear him complaining about gastritis, so they threaten him.
Enough! Before you hang by a tree!
No! Let him finish.
What, because some kid told you to let him talk, you're just gonna let him talk? Jeremy Irons says the time of the dragon riders will come again, and then we see Eragon throwing the baby dragon up into the air to make it fly. Where I come from, throwing babies is generally frowned upon, but these people are British, so maybe their standards is different. I guess anything goes in the country where people put beans on toast. Anyway, the dragon flies off into the distance, and then Eragon gets all sad because it doesn't look like it's coming back. But then his scar starts glowing like Quentin Review's hand under a black light. Then we see the baby dragon spontaneously transform into a fully grown dragon, and then it comes back to him.
What's happening?
Brom was right, Eragon. The time of the dragon riders has come again.
And it's psychic now. The dragon says her name is Saphira, and tells Eragon he's her rider. I tried to think of a joke about dildos to put in my script here, but I got tired. Okay, so in the movie, Saphira grows up instantly in one scene for the convenience of the plot. It's my understanding that in the book, she grows up pretty fast, but it's over the course of the story, that she and Eragon spend about a month together from the time that she hatches to the time the adventure actually starts. So they get a lot more character development than what we get in this movie. Director Stephen Fangmeyer explains in the commentary that the reason they had Saphira magically grow up in an instant is because the bad guys were looking for her and Eragon at the time, and they wanted to keep a sense that there was some looming danger, which you wouldn't get if you just saw Eragon and Saphira screwing around for a month. They did a similar sort of thing in The Lord of the Rings. In the book, Frodo gets the ring from Bilbo, and then 17 years go by with nothing eventful happening before Gandalf comes back and tells him the ring he got is the One Ring and needs to leave the Shire. But in the movie, Frodo gets the ring, then Gandalf goes off for a while, then comes back only a few days later and tells Frodo to get going, all while the ring wraiths are looking for him. This creates a greater sense of urgency because they realize the bad guys are closing in and they have to act fast, which works better for a movie. The difference is the Ring isn't a character that grows up or changes over time, so it really made no difference to the plot or characters when they shortened the time period in the movie, and nothing important happened during all that time anyway. But in Eragon, it does make a difference because the audience doesn't get to see Eragon and Saphira's relationship develop. And this is a much shorter movie, being only 103 minutes long, including credits, so I understand they can't spend a lot of time detailing a big chunk of each character's life, but they still could have done a montage or something. Like the beginning of Up, where we see the highlights from Carl and Ellie's marriage, and it gives us a lot of information about Carl's backstory, and we find out how he became a grouchy old man. The way it's executed in Eragon, where Saphira just magically grows up instantly, it just makes it feel like we're being cheated out of so much character development for the sake of keeping the runtime short. And the ironic thing is, the first Eragon book is actually longer than the Fellowship of the Ring, yet Fox gave them only half the runtime to tell the story in the movie adaptation. Anyway, we cut to Eragon breaking into Brom's house where he finds a book which just happens to be right there on a table with candles right next to it, conveniently already lit. But then Brom suddenly appears behind him.
Get out!
Eragon begs Brom to tell him about dragons, and for some reason brings up the fact that he mocked Gumby in front of his soldiers.
You mocked the king in front of his soldiers.
Better ask forgiveness and permission.
Brom tells Eragon to f*** off, so Eragon f***s off. Then Brom pulls out a sword with a red blade for some reason. On his way home, Eragon hears a commotion coming from the butcher's shop, and through a hole in the wall, he sees the butcher getting tortured for information by a Razak, telling him it was about him. And then the Razak runs to Eragon's farm to find him. Realizing Uncle Guy is in danger, Eragon runs after him, and it's suddenly daytime when Saphira swoops down and picks him up to stop him so the Razak doesn't kill him. Eragon struggles to stay on her back while they fly around and argue, then Saphira finally drops Eragon, and he runs into a barn and finds Uncle Guy dead. Okay, so Saphira somehow knew about the Razak trying to kill Eragon, right? I'm just gonna assume she knew because she could hear Eragon's thoughts, but if she knew about it, why didn't she save Uncle Guy? In the time it took the Razak to get there, she could have just snatched up Uncle Guy and flew him to safety. Or maybe even intercepted the Razak and killed it. I mean, she can't breathe fire yet at this point in the story, but she's kinda big and she has claws. Maybe she could have picked up a wagon or something and dropped it on it, I don't know. The point is, she could have done something, since Eragon was so far away, and the Razak didn't know where he was. So it's not like he was in immediate danger. There was time. But I guess the plot needed Uncle Guy to die, so he's dead now, and Eragon yells at Saphira for stopping him from protecting Uncle Guy. She tries to tell him the Razak would have killed him too, but he just tells her to f*** off, so she f***s off. And I guess the Razak isn't anywhere nearby because it doesn't hear Eragon yelling. He knows this is where Eragon lives, right? And he's operating under the assumption that Eragon doesn't know he's planning to kill him. So why didn't he just wait for Eragon to come home? You know, for an elite assassin, he's kind of stupid, isn't he? Then Brom shows up and I guess Eragon doesn't recognize the old man he was just talking to a few minutes ago. So he runs up and attacks him. But Brom just grabs his arm and sees the curly scar and realizes he's important. So he tells him that he'll leave before the Razak comes back. But Eragon wants to bury Uncle Guy first, so Brom just burns his house down. It suddenly starts raining for dramatic effect as they get on their horses and leave, and Eragon looks back at the life he's leaving behind one last time before they ride off into the second act. After a traveling montage, Eragon and Brom stop in the woods to set up camp. Brom tells Eragon to call Saphira, and Eragon says he sent her away because she stopped him from saving Uncle Guy. Brom tells him she was right to do so because he would have been no match for the Razak.
The Razak kill mercilessly. That's what they do. But a boy of 15, 16...
17.
Brom tells him Razaks are assassins sent by Durza. Eragon says he's gonna kill Durza, but then Brom points out that Durza is a shade, which is some kind of evil wizard.
A sorcerer possessed with demonic spirits.
I'm also possessed with spirits, but not of the demonic variety, more of the, I shouldn't be driving variety. Brom tells Eragon he's the Varden's only hope.
You're the Varden's only hope.
Who are the Varden?
He explains the Varden are rebels hiding out somewhere in the mountains, and he used to be one of them. And he tells him to call Saphira.
She's far away by now. She can't hear me.
Shall we have an agreement not to lie to each other? I know she hears your thoughts. Now call your dragon.
So Eragon psychically summons Saphira, and she comes swooping down.
I'm sorry for what I said.
I understand. You loved him very much.
So Eragon is a teenager, right? Like a hormonal teenage boy. So if Saphira can hear Eragon's thoughts, does that mean she can hear him when he's having gross fantasies about women? Or maybe even about her? He could be one of those people, you don't know. Anyway, Eragon introduces Saphira to Braum, and he inspects her and determines she will soon be strong enough to ride. And then he tells Eragon that he's some kind of chosen one, so Gullah Gullah will try to kill him.
Because the easiest way for the king to destroy your dragon is to kill you. A rider will live on if his dragon is killed. But if a rider dies...
So does his dragon.
Why though? Why would a dragon die if its rider is killed? Oh, you're not gonna answer that? Okay, well, you then. So I guess a bunch of these weird dudes called Urgles are forging swords or whatever, and Durza suddenly comes teleporting into the room. He takes the sword thing from the Urgle commander or whatever and stabs him in the foot with it in order to kill Eragon.
Bring me his head.
It's gonna be kinda hard to do that if you can't walk, you know. Back in the woods, Braum figures Durza will send Urgles after them, conveniently after we just saw the scene in which Durza sends Urgles after them, and suggests Saphira stay high above them to look out for danger while they make their way to the Varden, and to only come to them at night. This seems like a bad idea to me. I mean, if Saphira is flying around, wouldn't that just make it easier for the bad guys to see? Oh, that's exactly what happens. Eragon and Braum ride around until they hear distant screaming, so then they'll stop and look out from behind rocks and see Urgles harassing people on the road.
Urgles. These are the king's enemies. Now they're his guard.
Braum says they should stay off the roads, and then Eragon suggests fighting them, but Braum tells him he's not ready, but Eragon insists he knows how to fight from play fighting's cousin guy. So Braum tells him to show him. The next thing we know, Braum is sparring with Eragon by the river with sticks and kicks his ass, and the whole time, this heroic music is playing.
Good. Good.
So while this is going on, are all those people being harassed on the road still in need of rescue? Later that night, Braum struggles to light a fire by banging rocks together, so Eragon asks if dragons breathe fire, but Braum says Saphira isn't old enough. Then Eragon hears Braum whisper something.
How did you do that? What did you just do?
I started the fire.
So Braum is clearly hiding something, and Eragon realizes Braum doesn't trust him, and I can sympathize with that. I once trusted a woman not to use my feelings against me just to win a trivial argument. Then we got another traveling montage, and our heroes arrive at some dingy village made of sticks built on stilts over a lake. Braum tells Eragon to go buy some bread while he goes off to talk to some guy for some reason. Eragon then sees some shady dude in a hood and decides to hide in this one hut where he meets some kind of fortune teller named Angela who tells him someone he knows is about to die. And he's so stupid that he thinks he's talking about Uncle Guy.
But there is a doom upon you. Part of it lies in a death that rapidly approaches.
It's already happened.
She tells him about some woman who we can assume is Arya. Eragon goes outside and gets ambushed by an Urgle who, instead of stabbing him, now that he has the chance, just runs up and grabs him, giving Braum time to rescue him. More Urgles show up as they try to flee the village, and Eragon somehow accidentally shoots a magic exploding arrow at them and passes out as Saphira shows up to rescue them. Eragon has some kind of vision of Arya, then wakes up somewhere in the wilderness where Braum tells him he's somehow discovered how to do magic by instinct. Then Eragon asks about what happened at the lake village.
Those were Urgles, weren't they?
Yes.
Did I kill them?
Yes. But death is nothing to celebrate.
This psychopath didn't already know what an Urgle was? Okay, so Eragon is a moron who makes bad decisions and doesn't seem to know anything about the world he lives in, right? And I know why he's like that. They're doing the whole naive young protagonist thing, with the hero being this dumb kid who needs other characters to exposit the rules and lore of the setting to him, so it will be explained to the audience in turn. Now, there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, but usually when this is done, the protagonist will be a character who's new to the setting, like when Harry Potter first arrives at Hogwarts, or when Alita wakes up in Iron City and has no memory of who she used to be, or when Emmett finds out there's more than one Lego world. When the hero has no experience of something, then it makes sense that they would need other characters to explain things to them, and it makes sense that Eragon would need someone like Brom to tell him about magic and dragons. But what doesn't make sense is that Eragon needs somebody to explain the whole backstory about the Dragon Riders and how Glue Man betrayed them, since that's apparently common knowledge, as evidenced by the fact that these random bar patrons in some obscure village know about it.
There was a time when our land flourished without cruelty and fear. A time of dragons and dragon riders.
Those days are long gone.
Eragon also doesn't know what a shade is, even though Durza, the right-hand man of the king, and basically this world's equivalent of Kamala Harris, is a shade.
A sorcerer possessed with demonic spirits.
He also doesn't know that the Varden are rebels fighting a war against Gooey Louie.
You are the Varden's only hope.
Who are the Varden?
It's almost like he didn't even know that there's a war going on, even though his cousin left town because Gandalf the Bald's men go around conscripting boys into his army specifically to fight the Varden. And by the way, that whole conscription thing wasn't in the book, so that's something that was invented for the movie, which actually causes it to make less sense. Then later, Brom has to tell Eragon what Urgles are.
Urgles. They used to be the king's enemies, now they're his guard.
Like he doesn't know that there's an entire race of people who serve as the main military arm of the government that's oppressing him. I understand that Eragon is just a farm boy from some backwater village, but travelers pass through town, don't they? Has he never met anyone who knew about those things? How about this one guy at the bar?
Those days are long gone.
There's soldiers stationed in the village, so I have to assume it's not totally disconnected from the rest of the world. So news must travel here, right? Do they not have books? Samwise Gamgee recognized an Oliphant when he saw one, even though he had never seen one before, but we can assume he heard of or read about them. Does Eragon even know how to read? On the other hand, we have Saphira. She knows She was born maybe a month ago, and she already understands English and knows about dragon riders and all that, which doesn't really make much sense. In the book, it's explained that she has a sort of genetic memory that gives her the knowledge of all the dragons who came before her, and I guess that's how she knows so much about the world. But this is never explained in the movie, so as far as the audience is concerned, it's not part of this particular version of the story. So Saphira, who was born a month ago, seems to know more about the worlds than Eragon, who's almost old enough to buy cigarettes. None of this makes any sense. Oh no, that dragon's back.
I'm a dragon.
Yeah, you're a dragon.
I'm gonna read your list of $10 patrons.
And everyone's gonna skip this part of the video.
Doma Flynn, Mighty Penis, Nathaniel Tavis, Dalton Helms, Cortez, G. Busy, Brody James, Duke Snuggles, Fupar Superbud, Cameron Teleshaw, Enrique Fitzargy, Scientist, Shifting Flesh, Tiberian Loop, Gen 2, Toxic Masculinity, Salto, Noah Joseph James Flood, Macalab, Salty Buttons, Peanut Warlock, The Random Nightmare, Levi Jogs, Thomas Brown, Raffle Coffin, Eduardo Sanchez, Being Positive is the key to success, Josh Leibhart, Zenith, Marco Magpire, Fractal Soraya, Lilith Durante, Jimmy Jam, Liquid Quebec, Will Cavesi, John Cleveland, Kaiser Wilhelm II, Joe Burr, Noble Team 33, Diesel Diesel, Tony Belmonte, Twilight City Studios YouTube channel, Hey Red Penna, Alex Bones, Joseph Reagan, Lip Dick, Squizzy, Ricky Baruga, and Paco. That's all your $10 patrons.
Okay, thanks.
I'm leaving now.
Okay, that's out of the way. So Brom tells Eragon that magic has rules, and if he uses it wrong, it can kill him. So you basically have to level up to learn more advanced spells, so you can't just teach him everything. Brom then starts telling Eragon the ancient elvish words for various objects, so it can use magic to control them later on in the story when it becomes convenient to the plot. Then Saphira shows up wearing a saddle, which I guess they just have now.
You can thank Brom for the saddle.
I think the movie is trying to imply that Brom got the saddle from the guy he talked to at the lake village, who I guess just had it for some reason, but it's never made clear. So it kind of just comes across like the saddle just came out of nowhere, because it's not like Brom could have been just carrying it around in his pocket or something. So anyway, Eragon gets on Saphira's back and they start flying around in a whimsical ooh and ah scene. and we get to watch some bad green screen effects until Eragon uses one of the spells Brom taught him to see through Saphira's eyes. And it turns out she has the ability to zoom her eyes in, and that's when they spot the Razaks going after Brom on the ground, and decide to swoop down to fight them.
Eragon, stay out of this!
One of the Razaks knocks Eragon off Saphira's back, but he uses one of the magic words he just learned 2 minutes ago to summon a branch to snatch up the Razak that's about to stab him and hang it. Brom sword fights another one and kills it in the most awkwardly edited way possible. Then we cut to Brom rubbing some yellow goo on Saphira's wing while he yells at Eragon for being stupid.
Do you not listen to anything I tell you?
Better to ask forgiveness than permission.
And then Brom smacked Eragon for being a smartass, but that scene got cut. Then Eragon cuts open the thing on Brom's hand and we see he has the same swirly stove scar.
Dragon Rider.
Of course.
So it wasn't obvious to either Eragon or the genius Saphira that Brom was a dragon rider, even though he knows all about dragons and magic. Brom explains that his dragon was killed by another dragon rider named Morzan, and he took the sword used to kill his dragon and used it to kill Morzan, which in turn killed Morzan's dragon, leaving Galba Torqueswrench, the last living dragon rider who still has a dragon. So it's basically Brom's fault that guy is the king now. But it's okay because Eragon is there now and Brom gets to dump all the responsibility onto this kid. We cut to the Urgles returning to Durza's castle to tell him they failed to kill Eragon. Durza pokes this dude in the head and does magic or something and kills him. And then he tells this other guy he's the commander now. Durza then goes to Arya and pokes her in the chest and makes a black spot appear. And then we see Eragon having a dream about Arya, who tells him she's being held prisoner by Durza. But it turns out it's actually a trick from Durza to lead Eragon into a trap. If Durza can just psychically send visions to Eragon and trick him into walking into traps, why didn't he just do that before? This guy's pretty dumb, isn't he? Maybe that's why his name is Durza. Go wash your clown wig, dumbass. So Eragon wakes up and decides he has to go save Arya. Brom points out that Durza's castle is miles in the direction opposite of where they're going, and that's stupid to risk his life now because of how important he is to the Varden. But Eragon cares just oh so much about this woman he's never met, so he insults the guy who's trying to help him.
Eragon, listen to me.
Your shame is not mine.
She's not gonna you, dude. So Eragon flies away on Saphira. They fly over some mountains and arrive at Durza's castle. So I guess they wait until nightfall, and Eragon puts on a disguise that he just got from nowhere and walks right in through the front door. He uses the Dragon Vision spell to find Arya behind a door with a big lock on it, and even though Brom never taught him the spell for opening locks, he just somehow knows how to use magic to open locks, because that's how magic works. If the plot needs the characters to be able to do something, then they can just do it. Rules in world building are for losers. Arya tells him he shouldn't have come, and then Durza shows up.
Forgive me if I stare. I knew you were young, but even then I expected someone a little more. Well, more.
Did you not know what he looked like? Didn't you see him in visions or something? Durza tries to throw shit at Eragon, but Eragon uses magic to block it, and doing so makes him weak as he drops his sword, so then Durza throws a spear at him, but suddenly, out of nowhere, Brom comes running in and blocks the spear with his body. Okay, so how did Brom get there? Eragon left him behind, and we saw him fly over a mountain range. So he obviously flew really far to get to this castle. So how did Brom get there so fast? Can his horse run as fast as Saphira can fly? I actually listened to the commentary from director Stephen Fangmeyer to see if he had anything to say about this plot hole, and he actually points out that Jeremy Irons asked him about it, and his response basically boiled down to, who gives a shit?
Jeremy felt, well, where's he coming from? But I thought, it's quite okay, it's sort of...
Now, it's my understanding that in the book, Eragon actually gets captured and spends several days at Durza's castle, and so Brom had time to catch up. That makes sense, but in the movie, he just somehow inexplicably catches up to Eragon after getting left miles behind, so they could still have that heroic sacrifice. But now it doesn't make sense. So this is another thing they condensed for the movie, and this time, it comes at the expense of plot coherency. And we're expected to have an emotional reaction other than confusion. Are any of you, it doesn't matter whether or not the plot makes sense, what matters is how it makes you feel? People on Twitter going to defend this one, or does that rule only apply to movies you like? Anyway, Eragon shoots Durza in the head with an arrow and he disappears. So Eragon, Brom, and Arya try to escape, but get intercepted by guards. Then Saphira comes bursting in, and then a guy in the cloak who Eragon saw at the lake village earlier shoots arrows at the guards to help them escape. More guards start shooting at them, but Saphira says she can't fly any higher.
Higher! They're on the roof!
I can't! The weight is too much!
But this issue is of no consequence because the scene just kind of ends. Sometime later, Brom wakes up and Eragon tells him he killed Durza, but then Brom says you can only kill a shade by piercing their heart for some reason. He gives Eragon his sword and tells him to go to the Varden. Eragon tries to do some kind of healing spell on him, but he's not good enough at magic yet. He can do the dragon vision and unlocking spells on his first try, but he can't do healing magic because the plot needs Brom to die. So because they can't save him, they decide to let him ride Saphira while he dies, so he could die as a dragon rider. The next morning, Eragon buries Brom under rocks. Then I guess Saphira breathes on the rocks and they turn into glass, so he'll be preserved forever and become a tourist attraction like Vladimir Lenin.
Now time cannot ravage him.
Okay, so I think I heard somewhere that in the book, Saphira magically turns the rocks into diamond or something. But that's not explained in the movie, so it kind of just looks like she's using her fire breath to melt the rocks into glass. And if that were the case, then Brom's body would just burn up under the molten glass before it hardened. And in either case, it's not going to stop his body from decomposing because now the rocks are transparent and he's going to be exposed to the sun's UV rays. Anyway, Saphira stands up in a trailer shot and we cut to Eragon and the others walking through some burnt up forest. We see Durza dripping something from his nail, then Arya falls over and Saphira realizes she's been poisoned. Arya shows Eragon a vision that will lead him to the Varden, and then Saphira suddenly drops some guy on the ground, and it turns out to be Hood Guy, who's been following them this whole time. He says he can take them to the Varden, but Saphira doesn't trust him, but Eragon decides to go with him anyway. They ride past a matte painting and arrive at a waterfall, and Urgel tries to jump on them, but Hood Guy kills him. Then Eragon sees a thing in the waterfall and jumps in, then Hood Guy sees some more Urgels approaching and jumps in with them. They emerge on the other side where these guys point spears at them. Then we see Gabba Gabba telling Durza that since he failed to kill Eragon, Eragon has inadvertently led them to the secret hideout of the Varden, so now Durza has to lead his army to kill them.
Gather my army and follow them. Leave no one alive.
Can I just say that this guy is not a very intimidating villain? I mean, he looks like my dentist. He doesn't even do anything. He never even leaves this room throughout the entire movie, so we never even see him do anything evil other than push around Durza. Why is Durza, a wizard, so afraid of this guy? Couldn't he just kill him and make himself king? Why doesn't he? You look at other fantasy villains like the Witch King or Darth Vader, who are basically f***ed up monsters, and you can see why Avon listens to them. But this guy is just John Malkovich in a dress. I've heard that in the book, Galbatrix Rabbit never even makes an appearance. He's only mentioned and people talk about him like he's this mysterious, almost legendary force of evil. Kind of like Sauron. But I guess John Malkovich wanted his precious screen time, so they had him come to a soundstage and they shot all of his scenes in an afternoon. It's the same they did with Firelord Ozai in the last Airbender movie. Why? Why take away the mystique and balefulness of the main villain for the sake of some actor's ego? They're already getting paid millions of dollars, just tell them to f*** off. Anyway, we cut back to Eragon and Hood Guy being led to a cave where they meet some guy. Sorry, I had to bleep out his name because I was afraid YouTube's demonetization bots would think he was saying something else. And they don't care about context, so I ain't risking it. So I guess Al here is the leader of the Varden. He tells Eragon to summon Saphira, so Saphira comes in carrying Arya, and Al says their healers will take care of her. Arya is supposed to be an elf, by the way. She doesn't look like one, and they never say she is an elf in the movie, but I know she is because I listened to the director's commentary. Outside, some guy witnesses some Urgels killing their guards, so Al asks Eragon to help them in their upcoming battle, and Eragon agrees. But then Al notices Hood Guy and tells his men to seize him. Eragon tries to defend him, But Al says he's the son of Morzan, the guy who betrayed them and killed Brom's dragon. Hood Guy shows off the scar his dad gave him and says he hated him, but Al has him arrested anyway. It's my understanding that in the book, Hood Guy was asked by Eragon to lead them to the Varden, and he was reluctant to take them there because he thought they might recognize him as the son of Morzan. But in the movie, he excitedly offers to lead Eragon to the Varden, apparently not even considering the possibility that he might be recognized. So I guess they decide to make him stupid in the movie. Anyway, we cut to a big gathering of Glamrock's men, and I guess Ronald McDonald over here had a sudden makeup change because he inexplicably looks totally different now. Again, I listened to the commentary, and Fangmeyer said he wanted Durza's makeup to change gradually over the course of the movie.
And we, progressed that a bit. It was, decided that, yeah, he should sort of be more and more extreme looking.
That isn't what happens, though. He kind of just abruptly looks totally different from how he did a couple scenes ago, and there's no in-universe explanation. So now I'm scared and confused, and I want to smash my TV with an elk femur. Anyway, Durza does a big villain speech, then we see Eragon with his shirt off, and then What's-Her-Face takes him outside to see the ruins of the ancient city the Varden are hiding out in. Now I just want to comment on something. Eragon somehow manages to look both really expensive and really cheap at the same time. If you look at Saphira, she looks great. As far as fully CGI characters from the mid-2000s go, she looks really good. But then you have the Urgles, which in the book are supposed to be these horns troll-like people, but I guess they didn't want to make facial prosthetics for all these extras, so they just smeared a little dirt on them and gave them red contact lenses. The Krug guys from the first Dungeon Siege movie looked better. And they did the same thing to the Razaks. In the book, they were these freaky bird people, or at least I'm guessing that's what they were based on all the fan art I've seen of them. But in this movie, they're more like zombies wrapped in bandages, and they get little CGI bugs on them in close-ups. Then we have all these cheap little sets. I mean, some of them look fine for what they're supposed to be, like the village set at the beginning. It's just supposed to be an impoverished little peasant village, so that's fine. But then you have sets like Gumball's throne room, which just looks like a cave. It reminds me of Max Magician in The Legend of the Rings. Or how about this little town on the lake, which consists of like 5 little huts on the water? Compared to something like Lake Town in The Hobbit, and how much bigger and how much more lived in it feels. Or how about the scene where the Urgles are making swords? It's like a 20-foot by 30-foot room with like 10 guys in it. Compare that to the scene in The Fellowship of the Ring where the orcs are making swords beneath Isengard, and how much more lively it feels, and you really get the sense that there's a lot of work going on. The most impressive location in the movie is Trondheim, this ancient city the Varden are hiding out in, but we only see a handful of CGI buildings off in the distance, and the parts we do see up close are just like a cave and a few crappy little makeshift wooden structures in the middle. In the book, this place is described as a mile-high cone city inside a giant hollow mountain that's so big on the inside that it has its own weather. Picture Minas Tirith, but even bigger and located inside a gigantic underground cavern. Kind of a downgrade, isn't it? In The Lord of the Rings, you have all these amazing locations, like Hobbiton, Rivendell, Moria, Lothlorien, Edoras, the Black Gates, Isengard, Helm's Deep, Osgiliath, Cirith Ungol, Mordor, and Minas Tirith. And it all comes together to create this huge, fantastic world that feels real because it's just so much detail that you get a sense of some kind of rich history and culture. But then we have Eragon, which wants so badly to be the Lord of the Rings, and what does it give us? A cave, a little farmhouse, a few shacks on the water, a couple mediocre castle sets, another cave, some shacks next to a cave, and a few CGI ruins we never see up close. Does any of this feel real to you? And then there's all these establishing shots of buildings which are clearly just matte paintings because we never see them from more than 1 or 2 angles. I mean, they would look good if this movie came out in 1986 and not 2006. There's this one 3-second shot that stands out to me as particularly suspect. It's this wide shot of a bunch of Urgles running down a hill. Something about the flat angle and the wide framing makes it feel like they had maybe 5 or 6 extras, and they just had them all run down this hill multiple times in different directions with the camera locked down, and then they combined the shots together to make it look like there's a whole bunch of them, and then they did this fake camera move in post to disguise it. I've seen shit like this in asylum movies, not mainstream movies with big studio budgets. In some cases, Eragon actually looks cheaper than the Dungeon Siege movie, and that movie was literally made to lose money in order to exploit a German tax loophole. It just seems really bizarre to me that this movie could fluctuate so wildly in production value, especially when you consider the production budget was $100 million. That's more than they spent on any of the original Lord of the Rings movies. Yes, Eragon had a bigger budget than Return of the King. And the director, Stephen Fangmeyer, was a special effects supervisor on Terminator 2, Jurassic Park, Twister, Master and Commander, and even a few episodes of Game of Thrones. What the f*** happened? Anyway, they walk around for a while and nothing happens. Then Al shows Eragon the armor his guys made for him, and everyone starts preparing for battle. Then Arya shows up because she's just fine now, and they see the dragon armor the Varden made for Saphira, which I guess only took them a few hours.
They worked through the night.
Then they hear an ominous horn blaring, signaling the arrival of the Urgles. Everyone takes their positions outside except for Eragon. Then the Urgles come blasting through the wall because there weren't any archers or anything protecting it. So they just come right in. And even though they don't have shields and are conveniently bottlenecked at this narrow opening, nobody thinks to shoot at them. Then Saphira walks up next to Eragon wearing armor which now suddenly looks nothing like the armor Eragon and Arya were just looking at a few seconds ago. But the filmmakers thought nobody would notice. I mean, she's CGI. They could have just made the armor look however they needed. Or they could have gone back and digitally replaced the armor in the previous scene. You know, if I had $100 million to spend on a movie, I would shove it up my ass. So Eragon asks Saphira why she picked him to be her rider. She says some about him being pure of heart or something, and then she breathes fire for the first time. Then they fly around and start burning off the poor soldier slaves who are just doing what Garfunkel and Durza were forcing them to do.
Let me out! Let me out! Let me out of here!
They put him in a cage he could have escaped from at any time by just pushing on the wall. So Hood Guy joins the battle and saves the dude with the beard, and then I guess more Urgles come running in. Then Durza shows up with a bunch of human soldiers, and Eragon and Saphira just casually swoop down to light him on fire. Hey, remember the beginning of the movie when it was established that the soldiers are unwilling conscripts, and Cousin Guy left town specifically so he wouldn't be conscripted? And now Eragon and Saphira are just burning these poor, scared kids who don't even want to be there, and they don't even feel bad about it? I don't know, it's just kind of weird to think about.
I guess we're even!
So Durza starts yelling magic words or whatever, and this flying shark bat thing emerges from the smoke. He rides it around and starts throwing fireballs. Then Eragon and Saphira engage him in an aerial battle. They fight for a while, and the shark bat thing bites Saphira's head, and then she breaks free. But the injuries weaken Saphira, so Eragon gets on Saphira's tail and has her fling him toward Durza so he can impale him with his sword. Durza disintegrates, then Saphira catches Eragon as he falls, but then she violently crashes to the ground, but Eragon just gets him totally unharmed and rushes to her. It turns out she's dying. I've heard the aerial battle doesn't happen in the book, by the way. They just wanted an aerial battle for the movie, so they had Durza summon this thing which is apparently capable of killing dragons. Why is Grunklestan even worried about dragons if he can just have Durza summon this thing to kill them? So I guess we get this sad scene where it looks like Saphira is about to die, but then Eragon remembers that he has magic powers, so he tries the healing spell again, and then passes out because, remember, Brahm said magic can kill you if you don't know what you're doing. Then we cut to Arya, Hood Guy, and the others standing around the battlefield. I guess all of Gunther's men and Urgles are dead now. The last time we saw them, it looked like they were about to be overrun. Then the movie focused on Eragon and Saphira fighting Durza, then we cut back to find that they won the battle off screen. Did all the bad guys die when Durza died? What happened? Then we cut to Eragon waking up in the cave, and Hood Guy is just kind of there, like he was just sitting there watching him and waiting for him to wake up. Eragon asks him if Saphira is okay.
Some friends can't be replaced. Well, luckily some don't have to be.
What, did he just sit there waiting for him to wake up so he could troll him? If you're gonna be an a**hole, can you at least be an a**hole in focus. Eragon and Saphira hug, then Hood Guy tells him Arya is on her way somewhere, so he and Saphira fly, and I guess they just kind of find her in the middle of a field somewhere. Arya tells Eragon that she has to return to her people before Galvatron attacks again, and says some shit about Eragon being a hero now, and that they might meet again. Then Eragon and Saphira fly away. We then cut to Glan's penis grabbing a sword and cutting open his big map thing, and there's a dragon behind it. Because where else would you keep a dragon? The fridge? The dragon spews fire at the camera to hint at a sequel which never got made, and then the movie ends with some Avril Lavigne song, which I think might have actually been written for the movie. Because when I think of medieval fantasy movies, I think of pop songs by Avril Lavigne. So that's Eragon. And now that you know the whole story, did you notice anything about it? Did it remind you of anything? Well, let me spell it out for you. The movie starts with a princess fleeing from a bad guy. Just before she gets caught, she sends away the thing the bad guy is looking for, and it ends up in the hands of a farm boy who lives with his uncle. The farm boy meets an old man who eventually becomes his mentor and tells him about a time before he was born when there was a class of magical warriors who maintained peace before they were betrayed by one of their own and exterminated. But it turns out this old man is one of a few who survived. The bad guys find out the farm boy has the thing they're looking for, and they go to his house and kill his uncle. The farm boy leaves with the mentor, and they go to a seedy town where they're chased by the bad guy's soldiers. The old mentor briefly teaches the farm boy how to fight and use magic. The farm boy gets a message from the princess and goes to the bad guy's fortress to rescue her. The old mentor gets killed trying to protect the farm boy. The farm boy escapes with the princess and they go to the hidden rebel hideout, but the bad guys track them down and a battle ensues. Using his newfound powers, the farm boy saves the day and becomes a hero of the rebellion. You get it? It's f***ing Star Wars. Eragon is just a shittier version of Star Wars. Go watch that instead. Oh no, it's the inconsequential dragon again, bye. That's the end of the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave a comment because the algorithm likes it. And support me on Patreon. Bye.